Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this very, very timely topic in a lot of ways. I'm really, really excited to have our guest speakers today who are actually at our women's conference and in January, and it was an amazing opportunity to hear about ways that we can make a difference as individuals, as investors, as women. And so before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping topics, and then I'm going to turn it over to our very dynamic speakers today. So first off, the Smart Women Savvy Money Club is designed to provide educational lifestyle topics. We cover a variety of topics on the second Thursday of every month. The only month where we don't provide our wonderful webinars is in December, because we know everybody is busy doing holiday things. But each month, the second Thursday of each month, between 1 and 1:30 Pacific time, we host our webinars. And in order to get a handle on some of the things that we are doing, please visit our website, which you see kind of rolling around right now, and go to our events and media section, where you will be able to see all of the webinars that we are hosting. We're really excited also about the fact that we've been doing a Aging in Place webinar series. A lot of us as women are caregivers for other family members, our parents, our spouses, and so we've been doing a series on conversations about how to approach and be prepared as a caregiver, ultimately, whether it's for someone else or even for ourselves. We'll actually have a realtor who will be speaking who has a specialization and a certification in working with seniors and senior housing, and being able to assist individuals who are transitioning from their homes to either another type of home or assisted living or whatever that situation may be. The August session is, we're really excited also, two dynamic women who are senior care consultants who have their own agency. They're both geriatric specialists who will be talking about how do you provide care for your senior or your elder loved ones if you don't live in the same city. And I know I have a variety of clients who are like that. Their parents may live in another state or certainly in another city. And how do you manage their care and stay on top of being involved and engaged in their lives? So please feel free to come to our site. We do have September. We also will have a similar topic, investing in women, with Kathleen McQuiggan, who is with Pax World. In October, we will have our tech diva back, who will be speaking on how now do I cloud. And she'll be talking about cloud-based storage systems, how does that work, and in what scenarios might you want to take advantage of that. So, and the security issues around that as well. So we will have these posted on our site here in the next couple of days, so feel free to come to our site. We have a lot of dynamic information on our site, our blogs. We have a great infographic. I think you guys will find this of great interest, because women rock in a lot of ways. Also, our latest blog that Diane has written is extremely timely, since the U.S. has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. And she's written a very interesting and timely article about 5 ways to support our climate, which is a great segue into the conversations that we're getting ready to have today. So with that said, I'm going to introduce you to our speakers today, who are both with Trillium Asset Management, which actually is a very dynamic organization that focuses on socially responsible and impact investing. And it couldn't be more timely than what it is right now, because individuals are looking for ways to make a difference with their dollars, but also to make a difference with regards to their ability to select companies and invest in sources and resources that will affect change. And so with that, we have an opportunity to talk about the ways to make that happen. So with that, I am going to introduce our guest speakers today, which are Susan Baker. Susan, you're there?
I am.
Okay. And also we have Emily. And as soon as I find Emily, technology is a wonderful thing. Then we will have her to introduce as well. But I think I've got a little bit of an issue here. So, Susan, I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute and see if we can get started on our presentation. And we'll find Emily here to get her on the line so that we can begin our program, our formal part of it. So with that said, Susan, why don't we have you to kind of start a little bit about who you are, what you do. I know that you're the Vice President and you're a member of the Shareholder Advocacy team, where you lead and participate in numerous advocacy initiatives on a wide range of issues, which include sustainable sourcing, environmental health, labor, and human rights and board diversity. You began your investment career at Harvard Management Company, where you supervised the portfolio control team, and you've been with Trillium since 1986. I know you started there and was later promoted to portfolio manager and research analyst, but then you left in 2000 and to become the religious education director of a faith-based organization, and then rejoined the firm in its advocacy department in 2006. Guess you couldn't stay away from that. So with that, I think why don't we go ahead and just kind of talk a little bit about what Trillium is all about, and what kind of impact that Trillium has been able to make with regards to its investments.
Thank you, Renee, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon to speak with all of you about the different ways women and men who invest with small amounts of money or even larger sums can make a positive impact on corporate behavior and really corporate responsibility with their investments. As investors, we lend capital to companies, so we do have a say. We do have a say. We do have ownership in the company and a right to raise issues of concern or areas where we would like to see more disclosure from companies. So my role at Trillium is, in fact, shareholder advocacy, pressing companies to improve their practices on a wide variety of environmental, social, and governance issues. So my slides are a bit through the presentation. I'm not sure if Emily is on yet, but she was going to talk a little bit about the background of our firm, which was started by a woman, Joan Bavaria. And Joan really had this vision to create a company that sought out companies that were best in class in on a number of issues, and also financially healthy and attractive, and also push companies that were weak on particular areas along the spectrum of improvement. Renee, are you working the slides? We could move along.
Yes, I am. So keep talking and we'll get there.
Okay. It's interesting that both Diane and Renee brought up the issue of climate change, and maybe I'll start there because that's been in the news so much this past week, and people are wondering what they can do. One thing that we have done here at Trillium is join a large group of investors, mayors, governors, academics, and really just made our voices clear that we support the climate agreement, we support the growth of renewable sources of energy, and we really believe that we can grow the economy much cleaner and much faster if we embrace essentially a new energy economy through business and technology. So it was a pretty exciting announcement. We participated in getting the press involved in sharing this message that the loud voices of business and investment, even as the president makes a mistake, has been inspirational in the sense that we, the companies and investors, believe that we can show leadership on climate. And you've already been seeing the state of Hawaii stepping up and saying they are going to remain in the Paris Agreement, and a number of mayors saying that they are committed to reduce their energy consumption that relates to fossil fuels and seek renewables. So there's already this groundswell of support coming from investors to make it clear that there is a strong business case to reduce our dependence on oil.
Okay. I think we have Emily in here now. Emily?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Yay!
Okay, good. So sorry about that. I'm like, hello. Thank you. Yeah, why don't I give a few minutes of kind of backdrop to put some of the comments that Susan started saying into perspective. So thank you all for having us on. Trillium as a firm, you see our founder there on that slide, Joan Bavaria. We actually started Trillium, or she started Trillium, I should say, back in 1982. Back then, she was a fierce woman on Wall Street, as Renee and Diane can relate to. Kind of got stuck with some of the clients maybe that other people didn't want to work with, which tended to be the faith-based organizations and environmental clients. People basically that really loved what she did for them, but at the same time, really were yearning for investments that really matched their personal values. And I think that's kind of the beauty of aligning your dollars with your values, is that it can mean different things to different folks. So it was really the concept of the consideration of investments, not just from a financial perspective, not just earnings and profits and dividends, but thinking a little more deeply about, well, how does this company treat its own employees? What's its environmental footprint? What's its carbon output? All sorts of things like that. So we refer to that as environmental social governance, ESG. So when we say SRI, I apologize right away because there does tend to be a lot of different terms in this space. We at Trillium have always used SRI as sustainable, responsible investing. But if you think of it as value-based investing, gender lens investing, green investing, it's really kind of an umbrella term that at its most basic means that we're taking the financial analysis. We're not going to ignore that. We're still considering that. But what we're doing is we're integrating it with the ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And the result and our goal at our firm has always been to give competitive long-term returns, so performance, but also impact, which Susan will talk a little bit more about. So some examples on the next slide of ESG, just to put it in perspective. Think about, looking at a company that uses water. Does it produce a report on how much water usage it has? Does it have a plan in place to limit that? Does it have a policy in place that's dealing with climate change risk? Some of the companies that Susan was mentioning with the Paris Climate Accords, a lot have stepped up and said, we already have an environmental plan in place and we're going to continue with that. Social and governance are also two very important factors. If you're a global company, we really need you to be thinking about your supply chain and the human rights issues that are involved with that. Do you report on that? Do you have strong records in that? Governance, also very important. We do a lot with board diversity because as we all know, as many women as you saw in Renee and Diane's slide that are wealth owners that own small businesses at the larger and larger companies, we're not really seeing that reflected in the diversity of the board as one example. So that's another criteria we work on. So unfortunately for us, these lists are actually much, much longer, but this is just kind of a snapshot so that you understand when we say that we're incorporating these non-sort of financial characteristics, this is what we're talking about. We like to kind of bucket it in the E, S, and G category. And at the end of the day, and the reason why we're very grateful to have women like Susan on our team is because no matter all the research, no matter all the ESG factors we can incorporate, there's really no perfect company out there. So as part of our mission and part of our founder Joan's mission, again, is that performance plus impact. So for us, when we're talking about impact, it's how do we take the assets of our clients, how do we as an active investor encourage companies to be better corporate citizens and better environmental citizens. And we cover a variety of topics. So on the next page, we have just a basic definition of what we would term shareholder advocacy. And I'm going to let Susan talk about some specific stories because I think that's really a great way to understand the work we do. But for us, with shareholder advocacy, we have a couple tools, right? We can talk with the companies, we can bring up issues, we can actually file more of a formal request, which is what's known as the shareholder proposal, which Susan will talk a little about. And we also can do public policy and proxy voting. So that we're making sure that, you know, not only are we doing our due diligence on the company, but we're saying, all right, let's really use our power and use our clients' desires and assets to help these companies to be better and to improve. And we've had, you know, over 30 years of experience doing this. Susan's part of a 4-person team that all they do every day is live and breathe these type of important issues and work with companies. So let me turn it over to Susan so she can spend some time really giving you a concrete example of some of that work.
Thank you, Emily. And so this is what the nuts and bolts of shareholder advocacy is about. And the next slide really delves into why we even bother and why it has become successful over the last 3 decades. And you might remember the apartheid system in South Africa. And it was really shareholders who helped in dismantling apartheid. They used their ownership of company stock in the 70s and 80s, which helped convince the U.S. corporations to divest from South Africa, and that led to the eventual end of the system of apartheid and segregation. Also, shareholder advocacy is responsible for numerous environmental achievements. It's helped persuade companies to develop plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and step up plans to purchase renewable energy such as wind and solar. And I'll give you some examples of that later. But really, it's been a good strategy in moving companies, and Trillium has been a leader in doing this for the last several decades because it's really a way to demonstrate impact. And on principle, since over half of all American households are invested in the stock market, we are owners of corporations. Next slide, please. So these are the tools we use. Proxy voting, that refers to the annual ballots that everyone would receive if you were an owner in a company, and you vote on perhaps the boards of directors, on a shareholder proposal that might be on that ballot. And it's very important to ask your advisor or ask the person, or maybe you get them in the mail, to find out what is on the proxy ballot in a given year, because that's a good way to exercise your voice and to really send a message to the company that you maybe aren't voting with management this year, that you really think they should include more disclosure about sustainability reporting, for example. So that's one easy way to demonstrate impact in your investments. Another one is what we do a lot of is have company meetings, and we convey our interest to companies that way. We also engage in public policy, writing letters to our congressmen and women in voicing our views on how a particular bill might affect investors. And then we file what are called shareholder resolutions or shareholder proposals. Any investor with $2,000 worth of stock can submit what is called a shareholder proposal, really requesting a company's board to address a particular issue. So let me give you some examples. Over the past few years, I've approached 20 companies with no or just one woman on its board. And I asked them what they were doing to expand diversity. Why did I do this? Because representation of women on boards is dismal, and because it matters. These statistics here demonstrate really a business case that's been developing over the last few years. Companies with at least one woman director outperform those without by 26%. Then you have a critical mass of 3 women on the board. That improves corporate governance and it reduces what we know as groupthink, just bringing more diverse views to a group decision. And then even companies with boards that are 40% diverse by gender, race, and ethnicity have shown to outperform the overall market over a 5-year period. Next slide, please. So we took some of these findings and brought them to 2 California-based companies, Palo Alto Network and eBay, and we singled out these companies because they were weak on board diversity. Palo Alto did not have any women on its board, and eBay did not, only had 1 woman at the time, but they were splitting off their electronic payment company called PayPal, which essentially meant that that company would not have a woman. So we approached the company and explained, both the business case and the social value of having diverse voices on their boards, asking them to embed a commitment to seek diverse candidates in every search that they undertook. And after a series of meetings, because companies typically do not want to see a shareholder proposal appear on their annual meetings company ballot, so they sat down with us over a series of meetings and agreed to embed a commitment to board diversity. And then in the case of Palo Alto, 1 year after the proposal was withdrawn, they appointed a woman from a prominent accounting firm to join its board, and that was the first woman director. And eBay was a similar story. I mean, it's a little crazy that this e-commerce company would not have a woman on its board when we know that women account for more than 2/3 of consumer spending in our country. So we brought, again, the research and the investor case to this company, and they put in some very clear language in their governance documents, basically saying when they search for new directors, they will actively seek out highly qualified women and individuals from minority groups. And they appointed a woman, Gail McGovern, from the Red Cross soon after they spun off the PayPal division. I wanted to bring up 2 other issues really quickly. J.B. Hunt, and this is a trucking company in Tennessee, and they were one of the few transportation companies in our portfolios that did not have adequate protections in their non-discrimination policies for the LGBT community, the workers in their workforce who may be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. So we filed a shareholder proposal asking them to include clear protections for those types of employees, and they rejected our conversations and said that essentially we will let this go to a vote at the annual meeting. In fact, it did go to a vote, and it got a majority vote. 54% of the shareholders of J.B. Hunt agreed with us that the company should put in protections and make it explicit in their non-discrimination policy. So when the company saw that vote, and this can happen if there is a large vote, even over 20 or 30%, a company will say, all right, this is potentially a serious issue. We want to sit down with you again and see if we can hammer out an agreement. So now, since that vote, J.B. Hunt has decided to include clear protections for all workers in its workforce. And then I'll touch on climate change resolutions that we filed recently at Home Depot and UPS. And the resolution we filed there was really to urge companies to set renewable energy targets. So we really think that not only reducing oil and gas consumption, that companies need to broaden their portfolio. And if both of these companies, we asked them to set renewable energy goals where they would dedicate a portion of their total energy spend to purchases of wind and solar. And we reached an agreement with both of these companies in the last year and a half, setting clear targets to purchase various amounts of megawatt power annually. And I would have to say in the case of Home Depot, because it is such a large company, it really has the potential to drive changes in demand and consumption of clean energy. So even without regulatory leadership, federal leadership in regulatory matters around energy, companies are driving change within their own markets. So I'll just close in saying that by expressing views on governance issues or social issues is increasingly being seen as an important tool for investors to both protect and enhance the value of their investments and also really make a positive impact in the world. I'll turn it back to you, Emily.
Great, thank you. I think we have a few minutes for questions if there's any.
Yes, please use the chat box to post any questions that you might have. While we're waiting for that, I just wanted to make a few comments because it's been an interesting experience now that we've seen in the last week a lot of the private enterprise, a lot of the private companies now, or publicly traded companies, are even taking the stance that despite the fact that they're not getting the engagement of the federal government, that they're still embracing this concept of wanting to protect the environment, which I think is awesome. And hopefully we will continue to see more of that. Just a general question with shareholder advocacy, because I think that's pretty fascinating. You said you only need $2,000 of a stock in order to submit, a shareholder proposal. Obviously, how do you do that? Do you you have to match up with someone or an organization in order to put together a shareholder proposal? And can someone come to you as an example and say, hey, I know this is going on here, or I'd like to see some change take place? So if you can just talk a little bit about what that process is.
Sure. This is Susan. So in order to write a shareholder proposal, it's good to have a legal eye. Just check it over. It's a 500-word document. That's the limit. So you have to condense your ask into 500 words. And it is, if you're doing it for the first time, you really want to do it with someone who's done it before and who can walk you through all the procedures that are necessary to file it with the company, because it is considered a legal document. Mm-hmm. And more companies, more and more investors, are banding together and looking for shareholders who want to join in their effort, because you can have multiple co-filers to one proposal. Great.
Fantastic. And so along those lines, can you talk a little bit about what your initiatives are as as a shareholder advocacy? Are there some specific issues that you guys are looking at right now? I know you mentioned board gender diversity. What are some other things that you are looking to implement or have companies implement?
I can mention two that I'm most interested in right now. The first one is talking to companies about toxic chemicals and what plans they are putting in place to reduce them. There's been more attention paid to chemicals in beauty products, baby products, and one company out here on the East Coast called CVS Health has actually made a statement that it's going to reduce toxic chemicals, reduce its chemical footprint over the next 4 years. They're getting rid of parabens and formaldehyde and many things that we're starting to see more and more of in the news. So I'm very interested in bringing that leadership that I'm seeing in one company and pressing other companies to phase out harmful chemicals that are in our environment, and especially in household products and beauty care products. Sustainable agriculture is another important issue for us right now. Trillium is looking at food waste as an area that's really an area companies can help solve pretty easily if they track and determine ways to reduce their food waste. It would help mitigate climate change and also help alleviate some of the poverty issues and the undernutrition issues that we see globally. There's more research being done about that. And also helping pollinators. Food companies are just beginning to realize that we need pollinators, and they have been declining over the last almost decade, and that's going to impact our fruit and vegetable supply chain if we do not look at some of the agrochemical practices that we're implementing right now and begin to transition to more ecologically sound practices in our food system.
Great. Fantastic. I love what you guys are doing. You know, we hear a lot about SRI or ESG companies, and they're investing in it, but the fact that you guys are stepping up and really taking the bull by the horns and saying, look, we're going to do more than that. We're going to push for change, and this is how we're going to do it by, making sure and engaging shareholders in such a way that that we can make a change. So I so appreciate everything that you and Emily do, and we'll love to have you come back again because I'm sure over the next year things are going to become even more interesting.
Definitely.
And so, I would love to hear you come back and let us know what kind of agenda that you have at that point. So if there aren't any questions, I do want to thank Susan and Emily for their time. Susan, you're in Boston, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so it's the end of your day, so thank you so much for spending time with us today. And as for you as well, Emily, we look forward to having you back again. And again, for everyone, the call is recorded, so we will be sending out the replay link here this afternoon. And please feel free to share with others as well. We'd love for you to do that because we need to get this message out. So with that said, everyone have a fantastic day, and we look forward to having you on next month. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.